If anyone wants to look that up, it's worth a giggle. That's for sure. And they do have that, but what I think is stands out to me, Matt, about the product of New Japan is everything is pretty much told bell to bell. There isn't too much. Even the promos before it, they're only interviews, really. They don't do too much of the physicality stuff. They don't really meet in a ring before they get to this show, and I think that's a big thing. So that basically everything is about what happens bell to bell in the ring. The stories are being told during the match, and I think that's a huge difference, and I like that. If anything, I seem to be more towards that than seeing a weekly show of just different mixed match. There's many different variations of one match before we actually get to the pay-per-view, and by the time we get to the pay-per-view I'm fed up with it. That's how I feel sometimes with some of these matches in WWE. So I do like that way of delivering it and sort of treating it still as a sport, which is cool. I know it sounds a bit bizarre where we are now in the land of entertainment, but it's still good that they still do those little extra things. For you, Matt, did anybody stand out as far as a performer in New Japan? I mean, obviously Kenny Omega, most people's sort of go-to guy. We saw Chris Jericho very heavily involved, but of course, at the end, amazingly, their sort of biggest iconic guy, I guess, who's been around for such a long time, Tanahashi, would actually get the title back. I mean, him as a performer, Matt, is he one of your favourites in New Japan? Have you as far as a star and an all-round talent?
He's a pretty solid performer for me. And like you say, he's been around a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And you do really get that kind of vibe from him about why he's a star. He does have that charisma. Of course, we've seen him in person, so yeah, I think it's even better when you do see him in person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really overblown, kind of Japanese style.
Yeah.
And even his music, Go Ace and all that stuff,
Yeah.
is just so cool.
The Ace of Ace.
He's almost like a cartoon character.
Mm.
But yeah, so it was great to see him finally get his title back. Have that moment. It's like a hero being crowned again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of takes the sting out of possibly losing Kenny. So we'll see where that all goes in the end. But when, as you were saying about performers that stood out, I think you said there was that kind of gauntlet match at the start, but I didn't see that because that was on the briefing show. From where we started, the first match I think for us was Kota Ibushi.
Yeah, and Will Ospreay, yeah.
They both outdone themselves.
Yeah.
Night, and I think they had an excellent match that night.
Yeah, amazing talents. The both of them. And, something else I picked up on as well was just how much of a star Okada is still. I mean, he is like the main poster guy, I think. And, such an amazing story with him as well about his rise and, where things go. And that's what I kind of like about New Japan. I mean, I sort of delved into some of the history after watching this show because I really got hooked on it a bit. And, it didn't take me that long to work out who's who and where everyone's come from. Because there's far less content, it's just easier to sort of see somebody's progress. And it was good. I mean, I got to see, I know they made a big deal that he wasn't wearing trousers. And I was like, well, what's the story there? And I kind of just had to go back a bit. And it was all about, when he lost the title, he went and had a little bit of a crazy stint. And, I kind of got all that. And, but that was over a course of almost 2 years. That would never happen, of course, on the other side. You're lucky if things can stay the same for a week, sometimes in WWE. So I liked all that. Of course, we also had the Rev Pro British Heavyweight Championship was defended. We saw Zack Sabre Jr. there as well, which was cool to see him. And of course, Chris Jericho, who, still going as good as he ever has, really done like a no DQ match. I mean, that was just crazy. And some of the injury he sustained after that looked extremely painful. What those guys go through. But I mean, overall, I love watching Wrestle Kingdom now. I mean, I really do. I think I've got to see, probably not live, but I've got to see the last I think 4 now on the bounce, and they've all been a really good standard. I mean, if we were going through giving stars, I think that would easily outdo most of any pay-per-view we ever review, Matt. I mean, I got a feeling there wouldn't be too many bad matches on a show, you know, any stinkers on it. So yeah, really good. Love the way they were telling the story, and I know people, they're a little bit funny because maybe the atmosphere isn't the same as a WWE crowd and all the rest of it, but I can live with that quite happily. And I don't really have a problem with the culture side of it, of Japan. And one thing I will say, to any Western star that does go out there, unlike, you know, the opposite way round, they don't just give it the old, you know, well, he's English, so he's got to be a snob and he's got to talk rich and, you know, all that sort of crap. Whereas WWE, of course, any sort of Japanese stars, maybe with the exception, of course, of Nakamura to a degree now, but in the past, mate, it's always the same thing, isn't it? Where it's Lord Tensai coming in as freaking A-Train when he went there. You know, suddenly he's got to be completely different. You've got Tajiri, and they're always treated the same, like all the wrestlers they've had. Can't remember who that cruiserweight, the light heavyweight, what was his name? Takamichi Nuko. You know, they basically, they shove them together and they're always the same type of character. Always a bad person, you know. So at least in Japan, I think they have a much better understanding of what, you know, how to treat foreign stars and foreign talents. And it showed as well, because they weren't just sort of, you know, having their own guys going over. I mean, they were looking at it from purely, you know, standpoint of storylines and who's sticking around and where the future is. So, yeah, just good stuff. So, yeah, really enjoyed that. Got a few questions now, just purely on New Japan. So I thought we'd take them now, Matt. Mark says, really enjoyed Wrestle Kingdom 13. Was an epic show. I don't think it was the best, as good as last year's, but still extremely good. Why do you think that New Japan does so well consistently? Is it because of the talent, or the way they just let the wrestlers have freedom? Good points there. I mean, I guess it's got to be a mixture of that, isn't it, Matt, really?
Yeah, definitely. And it's like just you explained just now when you said they look towards their future. They are able to build a lot more in advance. You know, like we were talking about earlier, they can actually do a story a year in advance, even 2 years in advance. The commitment and loyalty from the people they bring in is always consistent, especially with their own homegrown talents. So it's good to see it that way, though, because like you said before, it's difficult with a company like WWE. They chop and change so often to try and keep up, and it just doesn't work out a lot in the long run. Sometimes people want to invest a bit more and actually want to see something that isn't just thrown out there in the space of a month. Sometimes a year is a better build than, you know, just something that they think is hot at the moment. And sadly, even WWE misses out on that a lot. They can actually book a match in a month, but they never book the ones that people want to see anyway.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Yeah, I kind of feel if you were a fan of pro wrestling sort of early 80s and in the 70s, I think you'd have to watch New Japan, really, to have a chance of really relating to wrestling now. I mean, it's so far changed. I think you'd see it as sort of an alien product now, where it's gone to in the US. But I think in New Japan, I mean, tradition pretty much has stayed the same as far as the in-ring stuff goes. It's pretty much, I mean, if you can go back on the history, and it's that sort of code is still there. I mean, whether it was Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid, and, you know, even Hogan's been there in the past, but, you know, it's very, very consistent. That's the one thing I'll say about it. And they do have a huge amount of history. I mean, professional wrestling in Japan, and, you know, I've been there before. Trust me, it's considered as, you know, one of the best. It's a sport to them. I mean, it's really a legit thing. I mean, they love that. They love sumo wrestling. and they're their main things. Like out there, that is it. In the US, you've got loads of stuff going on, and it's all entertainment, and it's whether it's American football and baseball and all the rest of it. But in Japan, it's very, very sacred. I think they're always going to have a very good home audience for it. They're the only sort of big dog in town as well. Although they do own Noah, of course, but unlike WWE, they didn't just zap up all the wrestlers and just include them in New Japan. They actually run the show separately, so kind of makes sense because then they get the best of both TV network deals as well. So a good show overall. Sorry, went on a bit of a tangent there. Zippy now is emailing him. Good name. Is New Japan the best pure wrestling product currently available? If not, who is? Probably, yeah, I would. Yeah, I think they have to be. That I know of, anyway. I think. I mean, I could say Ring of Honor is close to it, but I think even comparing that to New Japan, it's still kind of somewhat a little bit flawed. I would say if you're into a pure wrestling, I think as far as a top promotion goes, it'd have to be New Japan. Anybody else there for you, Matt, that you'd put in?
No, I think I'd agree with that. I mean, the difference for me is that whenever I watch New Japan, although I don't keep up to date with the stories as much as a lot of people do, it doesn't really bother me. I'm just happy just to sit there and be taken in by the matches itself and just watch it for what it is. And also, a lot of the time, it doesn't even matter about a story because you just kind of understand it as the match plays out. So I feel that that's the best way to do it. Sometimes, like if I ever watch a WWE match or anything like that, I need to know the story. Otherwise, I'm just like, well, who cares why this guy's fighting that guy? I need to actually get some substance behind the story. So yeah, definitely New Japan is the best at that. Yeah.
Another interesting name here, Star Wars fans. BB9 has emailed us in, Matt. Didn't know he was a fan as well. First time I've ever watched New Japan, I did a lot of research after and found out about Inoki. Huge star. I've heard of his name before. Of course, the famous match he did with Muhammad Ali. My question is, though, why is it that Inoki has been inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame when he had actually never appeared on WWE TV before? Well, I think that was a time where WWE started to induct people that weren't a part of just WWE, and they started to just sort of look elsewhere. I mean, I've got to be honest with you, and 100% Inoki should be in there. I mean, I have no problem with that, by the way. But it is weird, Matt, and it does sort of... I don't want to go too far into this rabbit hole because we'll be here forever. But I don't really know if there are any set rules for this Hall of Fame. I mean, it's so inconsistent. I don't know what the freaking rules are. At one point, you had to be in WWE. I don't know. I don't have a problem with Inoki in it, by the way. Inoki, at one point, did have an agreement with Vince Senior about sort of swapping talent and using people like Hogan and Andre a few times. They would use their guys. And, of course, Inoki done the famous match with Muhammad Ali. Massive star in Japan. I mean, nobody was sort of any bigger than that. But, I mean, I don't really know anything. I can't really remember what year it was Inoki was inducted, but I do remember he was there. Is there anything you can think of, Matt, why that happened? And I'm trying to think if they've done that before with anyone else where they haven't been in WWE.
No, it is a really weird policy, really, they have going to these things. I think it's a constantly evolving thing. I think it did used to be just WWE guys, and then they were kind of like, then they just realised they had absorbed the whole business and they were WCW now, so there's a lot of guys from WCW that deserve a lot of credit. So I guess like it's going to keep changing, Say like if anything ever did happen to New Japan, I'm sure a lot more New Japan guys would make it into the Hall of Fame. So it's just, I think it is very difficult. I think it is depending on very political, and it's whether you know the right people, whether you're in their good books, I guess.
Yeah, probably got a lot. So yeah, it might have been from the early dealings. Of course, Vince Jr. would obviously remember that, but certainly certainly in there. So, that finishes off our Japanese. Of course, any more questions you want to email us in, it's the usual email address, wrestleline@gmail.com. Feel free to hit us up there. Now, back to the US soil, Matt, of course. Can't get away from this. Just last night, less than 24 hours, of course, WWE's Raw, a fresh start, I've titled this as. And, of course,